Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're going to be taking a look back at the year of 2022. Now this was a pretty amazing year in all things for the channel. We went to lots of places, I visited lots of people, I met up with some old friends in person, and I filmed some fantastic collections, as well as bringing you the usual regular Star Wars book related retro gaming content throughout the year. So I do hope you've enjoyed it. So what this video is going to be is a little retrospective of the last 12 months, which I do hope you're going to enjoy. So sit back, relax, and let's take a look. So we start off with January 2022, and that was the start of a brand new series, sorting my vintage Star Wars collection. Now this took the best part of the year to film and resulted in 9 separate parts. Now a few of my figures did need upgrading and some of the weapons were the wrong colour, but I'm really pleased with them now, and it was great fun getting them all out again. Now I ended up buying my first ever graded action figure, which I promptly cracked open and spent about £60 upgrading a Brada figure, which was also faded in the sun in my cabinet. I was also able to borrow my friend George's vintage Doctor Who annuals, and George has got an incredible Doctor Who collection, and he gave me basically every single annual plus some of the related books that are sort of annual format, and I filmed these over 3 videos, and I'm looking forward to covering more of George's amazing collection in 2023. Then at the very end of the month I guested on the Universal Shabby Reviews Friday night live stream. I did this a few times this year, and this is where we talked about collecting Star Wars in the good old days, well, the late 80s and 90s at least, and these are definitely a lot of fun, and they're on every single Friday. So for February 2022, once again, we started a brand new series where I started looking through my vintage Pelican books. Now, I sort of looked at these 100 at a time, and I've now covered the first 400 this year, and also managed to fill in quite a few gaps. So I'm only about a dozen of these light blue Penguin paperbacks short now of the first 600. I also visited the first of 4 West Point toy fairs in Exeter. Now these have proved to be a great place to meet other collectors and dealers, many I'd not seen for, well, a couple of decades in actual fact, and I've been able to pick up a few new pieces for my collection, not least of which some old Matchbox cars and models, so this is something I've really been enjoying collecting this year. The real highlight though was that I finally finished my dedicated YouTube channel, and this is now where I record almost all my new videos and do audio work on the channel when I'm at home, so fantastic to get that finished. So in March this year I started pulling all my vintage Futurama merchandise together for one epic video. Now this stuff is great, and I had a real blast looking through and filming it all. Just superb stuff. Now on the 14th of March, we celebrated 20 years since the original Xbox was released in the UK. I released a YouTube short to mark this occasion and finished Halo 2 with my son in celebration. I began covering my vintage door paperbacks in detail, starting with the first 100, and my friend Andy came round to the studio and we started filming his amazing collection of vintage bubblegum cards, starting with the James Bond cards from the 1960s. Now I've been filming a new video with Andy virtually every month now, so do check those vintage bubblegum card videos out. I also appeared on a Dutch collectors podcast talking about the magical world of vintage paperbacks, which is a video I put out at the tail end of 2021. This is basically looking at the many ways collectors can enjoy vintage paperbacks and how accessible a hobby it really is. In April, I finally dug out my old Nintendo DS XL and I upgraded the memory card and got it running a whole host of classic retro games. Now this was an attempt to keep my interest in retro gaming until I got my hands on the Valve Steam Deck, which I pre-ordered back in July 2021. I also filmed a dedicated video on John Steinbeck in vintage paperback and attended the second West Point Toy Fair of the year. Over on my dedicated book cleaning channel, I pulled together my entire vintage James Bond paperbacks, and I went over these in what was an epic video. So May 2022 started with the first of a new series where I chronicle the building of my vintage Matchbox car collection. Now this really came about after looking at some old pictures of me as a youngster with my granddad, plus seeing lots of these again at the West Point toy fairs. It's something I've been enjoying this year as a bit of a change to books, as the prices are fairly reasonable. There are bargains to be had, and I just think vintage Star Wars is overpriced at the moment. I also had a shiny new display case to fill alongside the monthly Corgi Model Club releases. I spoke about the cost of vintage Star Wars collecting in 2022 in a dedicated video on the back of some incredible prices that were made at a recent Vectus auction. Finally, I got my hands on my pre-ordered Valve Steam Deck, and I began testing all the retro gaming consoles and handhelds being emulated on this incredible device. This console was red hot upon release, so the videos continued on a weekly basis for the next few months as various systems were covered in depth. Finally, I was able to film my friend Gary's outstanding vintage Marvel memorabilia and comic collection. Now, comics and rare Marvel items were abound, and I'm looking forward to filming a bit more with Gary in detail next year. We opened June with a look at online resources for vintage paperback book collectors. Now, I like to do one of these a year, and I was grateful this time round for contributions from other YouTubers and book dealers right around the world. Now, if you'd like to be included in the next one, do please get in touch. You've got a few months to get yourself organised. I also filmed a video looking at the mathematics of collecting old toys. This is what I call the 20-year rule. Someone owns a toy, maybe one that they had when they were growing up, and 20 years later they have an incredible desire to own that toy again. They've probably got a bit of disposable income now as well. Now, this fuels a collector's interest in toys that they had as a kid. It's a fascinating subject when you start thinking about it. I would like to say a special thanks to all my Patreon and channel members. They've been with me throughout the year, some of them many years now, right since the channel started. Your support is incredible, particularly since YouTube is very much a roller coaster. It's very difficult to make a regular income off this, but that's not why we do it. We do it for the love, but it does take an awful lot of time. So that support coming from Patreon and YouTube channel memberships makes a massive, massive difference, and it does help offset some of the expenses of running a channel. So sincere thank you for that. July opened with a slightly controversial look at the Toys That Made Us TV series, plus my experiences of buying from Vectis for the first time. This video didn't sit too well with the folks at Vectis, and they wrote a pretty scathing comment on the video. I'll be sure to link to this down below. Basically, my winning bids took over a month to arrive after I had paid for them. Just not enough people in the post area at Vectis. I called this out and they didn't like it. Well, there you go. A real highlight, however, was meeting up with my friend and former work colleague Steve, the outlaw bookseller, right here on YouTube. We met in Bath, took a tour of the book barn, which is best avoided, then we headed on to Hay-on-Wye, the proverbial home of books. This was a real eye-opener for me, as I'd never been before. It was mostly a great experience, but some of the shots were definitely better than others. Fantastic to pair up with Steve, though, after all these years, and I think the videos went down very well. Now, August was fairly relaxed. There was the third West Point Toy Fair of the year. Now, usually this isn't that well attended by dealers, but I did find some excellent items and was really pleased with it. My friend Andy joined me to do the commentary, and it was great to have another seasoned collector by my side as we perused the dealers' tables together. I compiled a Greene in vintage paperback video with a cool giveaway of a batch of Penguin First Greene printings. I shall try to do more of these going forward. This month also saw the publication of the first assortment of Penguin's little cloth-bound classics, as designed by Carly Bickford Smith. Now, Penguin very generously sent me a box with the first dozen releases inside, and I swooned over these for days. What absolutely gorgeous hardbacks these are. I also completed my first mega sorting session. New vintage paperback acquisitions were filed away in a massive shunting session. Well worth it, but very trying, and it took hours and hours to do. Now, September saw me visit the home of longtime vintage Pan book collector and friend Tim Kitchen. Now, Tim and I have been friends for probably 20 years or so now, and it was fantastic to film a collection tour, look at his incredible original artwork and other Pan-related rarities. What an amazing collection. This resulted in 4 separate videos. Now, on the way, I was also able to stop at the Ironbridge bookshop, which is a vintage Penguin book specialist, and do a little book tour of their shop. Now, the owner Meg was incredibly generous with her time whilst running the shop at the same time, and this really does need to be a bookshop you must visit if you're ever in the Ironbridge area. Lastly, an incredible vintage collection surfaced on eBay. Dubbed the Torrington Collection, this was an original owner collection with books in astonishing unread condition, which fetched pretty reasonable prices. Well worth a look. October? Well, October saw me catch COVID. I have managed to avoid COVID for 3 years, so I guess it was my time. Thankfully, I was already a couple of weeks ahead with my regular videos, so there wasn't a massive impact on the channel, except in a few videos from this period I do sound a bit more croaky than I would normally like to be. Now, as luck would have it, my friend and channel supporter Matt from Matt's Book Nook was able to step in and film a filler video whilst I was making my recovery. Now, if you've not seen Matt's videos, do please check out his channel, Matt's Book Nook, right here on YouTube. Now, I do regularly receive a fair amount of new publications for review on the channel. Now, I have been covering the excellent Men's Adventure Quarterly magazine, every issue, as well as new publications which are part of the Men's Adventure library, namely George Gross Uncovered and Pollen in Print, both excellent books. Also this month saw the publication of Ray Guns and Rocket Ships, another fantastic book for the paperback collector. November kicked off with the very last toy fair at West Point. Now, apparently the venue is just too expensive to hire and make a profit for the organisers, so it's moving to a new home sort of more in central Exeter from February next year, so I shall definitely be attending that one, so watch this space. It's interesting, but the sheer economics of holding these fairs really does rely on an awful lot of people coming through the door. We're now in a full-on recession here in the UK and in many parts of the world, so collectibles are bound to take a bit of a hit. Towards the end of the month, I was once again able to meet up with my friend Steve, and we took a trip to the All You Need Is Books paperback warehouse. Now here I interviewed Maurice Flanagan, a lifelong paperback collector and dealer, and toured his impressive warehouse. A second visit was immediately planned. And that brings us on to December this month. So December kicked off a brand new series of YouTube shorts where I showcased 25 objects of desire. So these were basically different items from my various collections, some of which I've never shared before on the channel. So if you missed these, I have compiled them all into a feature-length video which is now available to watch. I am interested in ideas for future series along these lines, so if you've got any thoughts, do drop me a line. I've also done my annual roundups of recommended books and magazines that I've enjoyed this year that make great gifts. Other videos that'd be fun to pull together was a look at vintage Brooke Bond tea cards and albums, plus my friend Andy brought around his amazing Mars Attacks and related bubblegum card collection for us to drool over. So there you go. What a year 2022 was. Certainly very enjoyable for me. I hope you've enjoyed coming along for the ride, and I really do appreciate the support for everyone who's watched my videos. And even if you've not subscribed or become a channel member, honestly I don't mind, as long as you're watching and enjoying the videos. That's all that matters. Now, one of the real highlights I think we've seen is when I've gone out to other places, visited other bookshops and collections and friends, and filmed their collections as well. So if you've got an outstanding collection that you think might be worth featuring on the channel in a dedicated video, I am prepared to travel for that. So drop me a line at julesburt@gmail.com and we'll have a little look and see if we can fix something up. So there we are. If you have enjoyed this video, do please give it the thumbs up. If you've not already, do please hit the subscribe button. And here's to a very eventful 2023. Thanks once again. Bye.